Ladies and gentlemen, I always tell people, if you want change, stop waiting for permission. That's how Alibaba was born, not from power but from belief. And today, I see that same fire in India. Yes, India. A country once colonized for centuries, India lived under the shadows of Western dominance, not just politically, but intellectually, technologically, and economically. Even long after independence in 1947, many of the systems that governed Indian society, education, financial infrastructure, legal frameworks, were inherited from colonial powers or heavily influenced by Western models. While this gave India a foundation to rebuild itself, it also created an invisible ceiling, a subtle dependency, a quiet voice in the back of the mind that asked, "Is our way good enough?" That mental chain, often more powerful than physical chains, has held back generations. But now that chain is broken. India's recent strides in digital infrastructure mark the true end of colonial influence, not just politically free, but now digitally and ideologically sovereign. The transformation began quietly but grew into a tidal wave. India didn't wait for permission to build its own systems. It created its own path. While the world was busy being wowed by Western fintech models like PayPal or Apple Pay, India quietly built UPI Unified Payments Interface, a digital payment system so advanced, so inclusive, and so efficient that even the West is now trying to learn from it. And this is not an isolated example. It's a pattern. India is creating indigenous frameworks across sectors, from Aadhaar, a biometric identity system covering over 1 billion people, to CoWIN, a vaccine management platform that enabled one of the largest immunization drives in human history. These aren't just tools, they are statements. They declare that India doesn't need to copy the West anymore. It can lead, design, and implement at a scale that others can't even imagine. This shift is far more than technical. It's deeply symbolic. When you build your own digital identity, your own financial rails, your own space missions, your own AI policies, you send a message, not only to your citizens, but to the entire world. That message is simple. We are not a colony anymore, not in thought, not in system, not in ambition. India's digital independence also redefines how the next generation sees itself. For too long, success was equated with going west, working for a foreign firm, moving abroad, or mimicking Western models of development. But now, young Indians are finding inspiration at home. They are joining startups, building solutions for Indian problems, and scaling them globally. They're not asking for a seat at the Western table. They're building their own table. This is the true end of colonization, not with treaties or flags, but with the quiet power of self-reliance. And perhaps the most powerful part of this movement is that it's not exclusive. India isn't shutting the world out. It's simply ensuring that when it engages with the world, it does so from a place of strength, not submission. It's no longer dependent on Silicon Valley for its future. It's building its own valleys of innovation in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and beyond. The last chain was mental. The belief that greatness must come from elsewhere, that innovation is foreign, that progress needs Western validation. That chain is gone now. India stands on its own digital feet, and in doing so, it has achieved something no empire could ever give it: dignity through creation. When a nation builds its own tools, solves its own problems, and writes its own story, it doesn't just grow, it transforms. The world isn't just watching an economy rise. It's watching a civilization wake up. And when civilizations wake up, they don't just follow, they lead. India has finally broken the last chain. Now, it's not asking the world what's possible. It's showing the world what's next. There was a time when India was seen only as a market, a place where Western companies came to sell their products, test their ideas, and expand their reach. For decades, the global narrative painted India as a land of consumers, billions of people hungry for foreign technology, imported goods, and global brands. The West looked at India not as a source of innovation, but as a destination to harvest profit. And many in India accepted this dynamic, believing that world-changing ideas could only be born in Silicon Valley, London, or Berlin. But that story has changed, and it changed dramatically. Today, India is no longer just consuming global innovation. India is creating it. From Bengaluru to Mumbai, from Gurugram to Hyderabad, India is giving birth to world-class companies, revolutionary platforms, and breakthrough technologies. These innovations are not pale imitations of Western systems. They are original, disruptive, and often more scalable than anything built in the West. Indian entrepreneurs are no longer following trends, they are setting them. Let's take a look at what's really happening. Flipkart challenged Amazon on its home turf. Ola built a mobility solution uniquely tailored to Indian streets before expanding overseas. Zerodha redefined retail investing. Byju's took education tech global. PhonePe and Paytm became household names that even countries in the West now study for insights. These are not copy-paste businesses. They are born out of Indian realities, designed to solve Indian problems, and in the process, they've become global inspirations. And what makes this shift even more powerful is the mindset behind it. For years, Indian talent was exported. The best minds left the country to fuel Western tech giants. They built Google, Microsoft, Intel, IBM, but from foreign soil. Now, a new generation has emerged. They're choosing to build in India. They're building for India, and in doing so, they're creating companies that serve the entire planet. This isn't brain drain anymore, it's brain gain. We are witnessing the rise of global innovation with a local soul. Indian entrepreneurs are not trying to westernize their startups. They are embracing Indian challenges, unstructured markets, diverse languages, low-trust environments, and building tools that thrive in that complexity. The result? Products that don't just work in India but scale across emerging markets everywhere. Because if it works in India, it can work anywhere. The world has started to notice India is now the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Foreign investors are pouring billions into Indian ventures, not just because of the size of the market, but because of the brilliance of its innovation. Whether it's agri-tech transforming how farmers operate or health tech using AI to diagnose patients remotely, Indian ideas are solving global problems, not just local ones. This evolution is more than economic. It is psychological. It's a shift from dependence to confidence, from waiting for solutions to creating solutions. Indian youth no longer dream of working for someone else. They dream of being founders, builders, disruptors. They don't want to move abroad to make it big. They want to stay home and build big from scratch. And this is how true transformation happens. When a country stops looking outward for leadership and begins looking inward for inspiration. India has moved beyond being a consumer of Western thought. It is now a contributor to the future of humanity. Whether it's AI, fintech, climate tech, or digital governance, Indian innovation is now shaping how the world lives, learns, earns, and evolves. This is not the end of the West, it's the rise of the rest. India is no longer being shaped by the world. It is shaping the world, and that, right there, is the essence of real freedom. There was a time when leadership meant looking west. Success meant going abroad, climbing corporate ladders built by others, and fitting into systems designed somewhere else. For most developing countries, including India, this was the only visible path. People didn't talk about global leadership coming from India. They talked about how Indians supported global leaders. That era is over. We now live in a time where Indians are not just contributing to global giants, they are running them. From Sundar Pichai at Google to Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Arvind Krishna at IBM to Shantanu Narayan at Adobe, Indian origin leaders are now at the helm of some of the world's most powerful and innovative companies. And this is not a coincidence. This is not luck. This is the result of resilience, vision, and a new confidence born from decades of hard-earned growth. These leaders didn't ask for a seat at the table. They earned it through hard work, unmatched talent, and a mindset forged in complexity. Because if you can navigate the noise, diversity, and scale of India, you're not just qualified, you're overqualified to lead on the global stage. And what makes this story so powerful is that it's not just about individual success, it's about changing the narrative. These leaders didn't just take jobs at the top. They brought with them a new style of leadership, inclusive, long-term, mission-driven. They understand scarcity, but they also understand abundance. They don't just focus on quarterly profits. They think in decades. They don't just follow market trends. They shape them. They didn't just fit into global systems. They redefined them. This is a psychological shift for an entire generation. For decades, Indians were told, you can be the best if you go abroad. Now, they're seeing something different. They're watching people who look like them, speak like them, come from schools like theirs, leading the biggest tech firms, the biggest innovations, the biggest movements. That changes everything. It expands the boundaries of belief. But leadership isn't just about titles. It's about impact. And what we're seeing now is that Indian leaders aren't only succeeding at the top of Western firms. They are also creating new models of leadership at home. Founders of companies like Infosys, Reliance Jio, Zerodha, and Nykaa are not just building businesses. They are building ecosystems. They are mentoring the next generation, creating cultures of innovation, and pushing India to think big, act bold, and lead fearlessly. Leadership beyond borders doesn't mean abandoning your roots. It means carrying them with pride into boardrooms and brainstorming sessions across the world. It means showing that leadership can be grounded in humility, in diversity, in cultural richness. That you don't have to be Western to be modern. You don't have to be foreign to be global. This new era of Indian leadership is not about domination. It's about direction, about using influence to uplift, to inspire, to reshape how the world thinks about growth, inclusion, and innovation. It's about the power of ideas born in the East, executed with precision, and accepted across borders because of their universal value. And this is just the beginning. Today's global CEO were yesterday's curious children in Indian schools and streets. Imagine what's coming next. The next 10, 20, 50 years will see even more Indian minds shaping not just companies, but entire industries, global policies, and societal mindsets. The world is no longer asking, can Indians lead? Now it's asking, how far will they lead us? India's leadership is no longer limited to its borders. Its voice, its ideas, its vision are now influencing the world, and the best part, the world is listening, because true leadership doesn't come from where you are born. It comes from the courage to rise, the vision to act, and the humility to serve. And now, more than ever, India is ready to lead. For too long, the world has assumed that to succeed on the global stage, a nation must westernize, adopt Western habits, follow Western policies, imitate Western culture. The West became the blueprint for modernity, progress, and power. But what happens when a country proves that it doesn't need to follow to rise? That's exactly what India is doing today. India is showing the world that true progress doesn't require letting go of your roots. You don't have to trade your culture for code, your identity for influence, or your traditions for technology. India's rise is not a copy of the West. It's something far more powerful. It's a new model of growth born from Eastern spirit with global impact. India isn't trying to be the next America. It's trying to be the first India. Look at how India is building its future. Digital payments, not with credit cards, but with UPI. A mobile, first system that works in tiny villages and massive metros. Space technology, not with billion-dollar waste, but with low, cost high, efficiency missions like Chandrayaan and Mangalyaan. Healthcare, not with massive insurance chains, but with telemedicine, mobile clinics, and Ayurvedic science meeting, AI diagnostics. This isn't imitation, it's innovation rooted in identity. India understands something that many countries forgot in the rush to modernize. Power comes from within, from language, from philosophy, from spirituality, from resilience. The values of the East family, community, discipline, humility are not barriers to success. They are advantages, and now India is using those very values to build global systems that are faster, leaner, and more inclusive than ever before. Think about yoga and meditation. Once seen as Eastern traditions, now they are global solutions. Every tech CEO in Silicon Valley talks about mindfulness, work-life balance, inner peace. These ideas didn't come from boardrooms. They came from India, from the Vedas, from the Gita, from a civilization thousands of years old. India's impact isn't just in numbers or GDP, it's in wisdom that transcends borders. It's in the ability to blend the ancient with the modern, the spiritual with the scientific, the emotional with the rational. That fusion is India's superpower. While others build stronger machines, India is building deeper minds. When the West promotes hyper-individualism, India reminds the world of collective strength. When the world races toward consumption, India teaches the value of balance. When global systems crash due to greed, India proposes models based on equity, ethics, and empathy. And the world is taking notice. Investors, policymakers, educators, and tech leaders are now looking east, not just for talent, but for leadership, philosophy, and principles. Because India is not just giving the world new technologies, it's giving it new ways of thinking. This is not an age of one civilization rising while another falls. This is a time for convergence, and India is uniquely positioned to lead that convergence, not by abandoning its roots, but by growing from them. It's offering the world something fresh, something grounded, something powerful. This is the age where Indian festivals become global events, where Indian design inspires global fashion, where Indian cinema breaks language barriers, where Indian ideas change how the world thinks about economy, energy, environment, and even existence. India's rise proves one simple truth: you don't have to become someone else to be great, and that's the most powerful message of all. Because when you succeed by being authentic, by being true to who you are, you don't just win the race, you redefine it. India is rising, not by erasing its soul, but by amplifying it. And in doing so, it's showing the entire world that the future is not Western. It is human, and India is leading that human future. With Eastern wisdom and global impact, there was a time when freedom was measured by flags, borders, and national anthems, but in today's world, real freedom is something deeper. It's not just about independence from foreign rule, it's about independence of the mind, of opportunity, of economic destiny. And in modern India, that freedom is being unlocked not by governments or armies, but by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship in India is no longer just a business decision. It is a revolution. It is the ultimate form of liberation. Because when a young Indian builds a startup from scratch, they are not just creating a product. They are breaking centuries-old chains. Chains of dependency, chains of job-seeking mindsets, chains that told them to stay small, stay silent, stay safe. Every time an Indian entrepreneur takes a risk, raises capital, builds a team, launches a product, they are tearing down a legacy of limitation. This is the power of the startup movement. It doesn't just change balance sheets, it changes belief systems. Look around. India's startup ecosystem is exploding. From tech to textiles, agriculture to AI, fintech to fashion, entrepreneurs are solving real problems, building global solutions, and rewriting what's possible. These companies aren't just making money, they're creating freedom, freedom from outdated systems, from unemployment, from economic inequality. Each Indian unicorn is not just a business success, it's a national milestone. It's a reminder that the future doesn't belong to those who inherit power. It belongs to those who create it. And here's the most powerful part. This movement is not coming from elite boardrooms or foreign investors alone. It's rising from college dorms, small towns, garage offices, and kitchen tables. It's coming from people who were never expected to lead, but they dared to try, and in trying, they started to win. This is the real India story. Entrepreneurs in India are not just launching apps. They are solving traffic, digitizing payments, making healthcare accessible, teaching children in remote areas, and giving millions of people tools to rise. They are building companies that matter, companies that serve, companies that empower. That's how a nation transforms, not through charity, but through ownership. Entrepreneurship gives people control over their destiny. No longer do they need to wait for government jobs or foreign opportunities. They don't need to emigrate to succeed. They can now build something extraordinary right from their hometown with just an internet connection and an idea. This is liberation. When a woman in a rural village builds an online business, she's not just earning, she's changing the role of women in her community. When a 20-year-old dropout launches a coding startup, he's not just working, he's proving that traditional paths are not the only way to success. When someone from a poor background creates a fintech platform, they're not just innovating. They're making sure the next generation won't have to beg for access to banking. Entrepreneurship in India is turning pain into purpose and struggle into strength. And this movement is just getting started. The world's next big breakthroughs in AI, sustainability, education, and healthcare might not come from Silicon Valley. They might come from Pune, Jaipur, Kochi, or Indore. Because when you unlock one entrepreneur, you ignite 1,000 dreams. That's the multiplier effect. That's the power of creation, and India is full of creators now, not just dreamers, but doers, people who are building not because someone told them to, but because they believe they can. And that belief, that is the most powerful form of freedom there is. This isn't just economics, this is national rebirth. Entrepreneurship is not just India's opportunity, it is India's weapon, and every founder, every coder, every hustler is a freedom fighter of the new era. For decades, the world moved in one direction. The ideas, the capital, the influence, the innovation, they all flowed from west to east. The West created, the East consumed. The West led, the East followed. The West spoke, and the rest of the world listened. That era has now come to an end. Today, the world is no longer one way. It's a two-way street, and India is walking confidently in the center of it. For years, global systems treated countries like India as users, not makers, customers, not creators. The role was clear: adopt, adapt, absorb. But something powerful changed. India stopped asking for inclusion and started building systems of its own. And when you build your own systems, something incredible happens. People start coming to you. You can see this in every sector. India doesn't just import technology now. It exports intelligence. Indian engineers, scientists, and creators are no longer hidden behind the scenes. They are out front, leading conversations, steering revolutions, and shaping the global tech landscape. And it's not just people, it's platforms. From UPI and Ankh to CoWIN and Aadhaar, India has developed digital systems that are being studied, admired, and even replicated around the world. This is a new chapter. The world is no longer teaching India how to innovate. India is now teaching the world how to innovate for scale, for inclusion, for diversity. How to build for billions, not just for the privileged few. The narrative is flipping. It used to be that everything global had to be Western. Now something global can be Indian. Indian apps, Indian policies, Indian films, Indian fashion, Indian voices in global boardrooms, Indian philosophies in leadership models, Indian values shaping business ethics and global sustainability frameworks. This is not about domination. This is about balance, a new harmony where influence flows in all directions, not just one. When India speaks today, at summits, on stages, in startups, the world listens. Not because of its population, but because of its perspective. because India brings something the world needs: the ability to think with logic and feel with empathy, to blend technology with humanity, to find strength not in control, but in compassion. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this transformation is that it's being driven by people who were once left out of the global story. Young people from small towns, women entrepreneurs breaking through decades of silence, underrepresented communities finding their voices through innovation. These are not just success stories, they are signals. Proof that the world is opening in new directions. Trade, knowledge, and influence now move through different routes where India is no longer at the receiving end. It is building bridges, not borders. Leading dialogues, not just attending them. And in this multi-directional world, the real winners are those who create value for everyone. That is where India shines, because India doesn't rise alone. When India builds, it uplifts. When India innovates, it includes. When India leads, it listens. This is the new power, not built on domination, but on contribution, not on what you take, but on what you give. And India is giving the world new hope, new models, and a new rhythm of growth. The days of one-way dependency are over. We are entering an age of exchange, mutual respect, collaborative progress, and in this age, India is not standing at the gates. It is holding them open. So the next time someone says the world still runs one way, show them a startup in Kerala solving a global health crisis. Show them an Indian teen coding for climate change. Show them a rural entrepreneur exporting goods across borders from her phone. Because the world isn't one way anymore, it's wide open, and India is right in the middle of it, not following, but leading the flow.